Hello and welcome to Rise of Humanity. I am your host, Chris Karamyar, and for today's episode, I am joined by my guest, SOLARA Sophia Rose. SOLARA is a multidimensional energy expert and master channel and helps people to unleash their true potential as spiritual beings to navigate life with power and grace and in turn lift the collective consciousness of humanity. SOLARA is a true embodiment of love and a fountain of wisdom and is dedicated to her mission of bringing light to this world. So, SOLARA, it's great to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. That was a really beautiful introduction.
I love you. I love your stuff. So.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Oh.
Awesome. So, I mean, before we get into the work, which sounds awesome, it's obviously hugely expansive, but you are also a dancer and a poet as well. So what are the what's the importance of having those kind of more human things in your life?
Yeah, to remind me that I'm here, hey, on planet Earth.
Yeah.
To me, this whole journey is very integrative, and so those are things that they add to my spirituality. They add to my sense of wholeness and my self-expression as a creative manifestation of source energy. So helping me to stay nice and grounded in my body, allowing me to express parts of my own being that I can't otherwise express in words. Well, the poetry piece, but the dancing serves as kind of a form of prayer for me. And I've also found it to be incredibly helpful during more cathartic times in my life to have physical activity there to help me express the energy that I'm shifting through. Yeah, and poetry it really allows me to express the deeper parts of my soul that aren't always on display. Yeah, it just gives me that permission to go there and really communicate that part of my essence.
Yeah, that's cool. It's like a vehicle for spiritual expression.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well because I enjoy dancing myself. I've never had like professional lessons, but I love to dance and write music and stuff, and it's a very cathartic experience.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I also find it to be quite empowering too, strengthening, I mean, it would similar to any physical activity. Yeah, it just helps me to feel strong.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it sounds like you've really got things dialed in. I mean, I was just reading through your website and I mean, traveling to exotic places. Vanilla bean ice cream over rich espresso brownies.
Yes.
In nature, laughing, silence,
Oh,
music, dancing.
mm.
Awesome.
Oh,
And that's
yeah,
what
it's
it's
that soul
about.
food.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because, yeah, I can definitely relate to the grounding effect because one of the things that I don't know if you've experienced this, be interesting to know if you have, but one of my experiences has been that when I've expanded my awareness in such a rapid rate, it's almost sometimes difficult to focus on the human experience so much. It's like we live in this huge multi-dimensional universe, and it's just like we have to enjoy these little things as well.
Uh-huh. I'm really glad that you said that because something that I have discovered in my experience is that the more present that I become, the more deeply attuned I am to the now, and I'm paying deep attention to what's occurring right, in front of me, whatever I'm doing at that time, whoever I'm engaging with, it almost unlocks this deeper depth to the human experience and to the multidimensional experience because it allows me to see into the multi dimensional aspects of people, of things,
Mm.
beyond just the surface level appearance, but what's beneath that, what's inside, what's beyond that. So being deeply rooted in the human experience kind of serves to open me to more of the multidimensional, which is kind of paradoxical.
Yeah. It's so cool. And I'm glad I've been able to have that awareness because I would say, like, about 4 years ago for me was when I had that big kind of shift into, what the universe is really about. And I spent probably a good year at least wanting to be somewhere else. And I
Hmm.
finally had that shift that, oh, it's right here.
Uh-huh.
That'll come later. And as you said, when you embrace this experience, it actually unlocks more of that. So that's really cool.
Mhm. Yeah, it's amazing how much magic and beauty and wonder we have available to us in the moment. I think one of the things for me personally, and one of my main practices is to just stay present.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it is a challenge.
Uh-huh. It's just like that constant reminder. It's interesting, and I was uh, contemplating this last night because I wanted to write an article about it. I was thinking about control dynamics and how often we try to take control of things. And for me, the discipline or the thing that I prefer to take control over is my attention. So, am I deeply anchored in the here and now? And can I be so anchored in the now that I'm attuned to my intuition and I can hear it clearly to act upon it from moment to moment to moment to moment? And so that's, really living from a point of absolute trust that as I stay plugged in, my destiny will unfold itself if I'm listening and acting and engaging in the fullness of this experience without needing to try to map it out in the typical ways that we as humans try to map things out to provide a sense of security. So then the security, it comes from presence and trust versus having thinking that our sweet beautiful human minds have the capacity to map out this journey.
Yeah, I love it. And that that's yeah, definitely a big thing for me is I can see the bigger picture usually quite accurately for myself, but as I from a day-to-day thing, it's a lot more difficult and I'm like, oh, should I do this, should I do that? And I know it'll turn out all well in the end, but it really creates a lot of it is scary just going from moment to moment and taking it step by step. And what I've experienced, especially recently, is that when you do try and control it too much, you can derail yourself. Like you might be on the right
Mm.
path all along, but you're just taking little steps, and you're like, "Oh, this can't be right." And then a few months later, you're like, "Oh, yeah, it was the right thing. I should have just stopped panicking and enjoyed the process."
Oh, that's beautiful. That's
Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah. Oh,
that's so cool.
oh.
um, so I mean, I mean, talking about having seen that, I mean, mapping things out and setting goals and things like that. Is it? I mean, what's your take on that? And then being in alignment, and is it for you? Do you like set goals and do you have plans and stuff, or is it? Do you really just go with the flow?
Hmm. Well, it's interesting because hmm, this is a good question. I do my absolute best to stay as focused and clear and alert as present as I possibly can. And if the present moment calls me to make a plan, then I do that. And usually it's not for very far out. So what happens for me, because I'm a visionary, is I'll get the vision. So I'll see the bigger scope of things, the bigger picture, the manifestation. So what is coming to fruition by virtue of my presence? And then I kind of zoom back into the now to allow myself to complete that picture step by step by step. So I don't try to map it out. I know that the universe is much more efficient than I am. So my experience has been that when I plan something super far ahead, it never works out that way anyways. And so it makes more sense for me to have the vision, to hold the vision, and to stay plugged into my why. What is that force that's going to continue to propel me forward from moment to moment without getting too hung up on the details of how it's going to come to pass?
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I don't know many people who live that way, and even I would kind of struggle to live that freely. I mean, like you said, when you plan ahead, it usually quite often doesn't turn out as you expect. But I like to kind of have a plan, like like
Mm-hmm.
this is my business goals, relationship, health, finance, hobbies, and all that kind of stuff. And I have a little vision for
Yeah.
each one. But I mean, it's cool. I think it's good to have. But yeah, I mean, do you do anything like that at all?
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful too. I have quite a few friends in my circle, particularly men, who like that really it inspires them to have that. And I think that whatever helps us plug into that inspiration is perfect for us. I do things like that. I have a very loose structure for my days around my mission and my business and my workouts and health and all of this that I adhere to. But those things are so innate to me now that I just do them. So that in and of itself has become an intuitive process. And one thing that I do still really enjoy doing is so I'll write down a list of the things that I want to manifest and just get really excited about those things. And then when those specific things manifest, I'll go back in and go, okay, what's next? Now
Yeah,
what? What do we want to experience? Oh,
yeah,
so yeah.
that's awesome. So, um, let's talk. I mean, I've read quite a lot of your posts on Facebook, and I love the quantum based approach and the quantum and just quantum physics and the science of everything. I love that kind of stuff, and it's really come into my life quite strong recently, and I can see that it runs through your work as well. And um, I mean, could you just give an overview of kind of the this new way of creating a new reality that's kind of becoming much more prominent in the world today? I mean, from obviously the old ways of going about things and Newtonian physics is going like just working as hard as you can, hustling 80 hours a week to achieve your goals. But there's a new way available to people. So do you, would you like to share some insight on that?
Yeah, I would love to do that. So, a good friend of mine always says if it's not quantum, it's not instant. And I love, or if it's not instant, it's not quantum. And I love that because Newtonian physics well, it gives us a timetable for things. And with this, what we're doing is taking time out of the equation, but then it becomes about plugging into the frequency of source. And it's really quite simple. It's really about ask, receive, ask, receive. Um, but the thing where Newtonian physics does come into play and where it's still really valuable to integrate is that once we receive the creation, we really have to have the energy and the inspiration to build upon and maintain and nurture and care for those creations. And so um,
Mm.
yeah. So it's kind of integrative to me. It really is as simple as I am the creator. What is it that I desire to experience next? Okay, this is the thing, and I specify what that is. It's almost like an artist with a canvas, and you
Hmm.
decide what am I going to paint, or you receive a vision, and then you allow that to come through you. And you begin to shape it and mold it and add color to it. And it's kind of the same with our creative process. It's a question of what do I want to create next? What would I love to experience? What would be most helpful and beneficial for my family and my community and my tribes, and really the collective if we're spanning out to that expanded vision. And just starting to paint and play and ask and then live in the having of it. Because once we ask for something, it's already done. Creation begins to rearrange and orchestrate itself instantly to form itself around our decision. And so it's about making the decision and staying in the knowingness that that thing is being formulated, and then listening to our, gut instinct and intuition, and following through on the action steps that we're guided to take.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can talk a bit more about how, like, ways to do that, but just first of all, what's your take on the whole purpose of the human experience and what we're here to do? Because I think some people, it seems quite sort of common today, people think we're just here to learn to be happy, but I think there's a lot more to it than that. What's your take on it?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I would love to hear your impressions also around this. I think it's to self-realize, to remember who and what we are, and then to create from that space of remembrance and knowing. And ultimately, every soul is desiring to expand. It's the natural evolutionary impulse to expand and to self-discover and self-realize and self-actualize more and more and more and more. So for me, let me feel into this for a minute, because I think there's so many reasons that we're here. And I really don't, I think it's beautiful that you asked this question, because I've been reflecting on this recently as well. I don't think that happiness is the goal. I think if there's any type of, I think awareness feels like more of a goal than happiness. Expanded self-awareness, and that's internal awareness and external awareness, because I think so often we emphasize the lighter side of creation, which is beautiful and filled with life, and this is where we self-actualize in the light, but we really forsake so many other aspects and elements of creation when we only give our attention to that. There is the womb space, there is the sacred feminine, there is the darkness, there is the void, and I think part of this journey is about really recognizing and actualizing our wholeness. So for me, that kind of looks like the center point, the point in the middle, the objective observer that can stand at the center and hold space for the light and the dark, and really have the capacity to be at one with all of it, to see it clearly for what it is, not try to, change it into something else, not try to take fear and change it into happiness, but to be with that fear with the same amount of love and acceptance as we would be with our happiness. It's funny, I said to someone recently, I've never seen a book on how to become more fearful, but there's a million books about how to become more happy. And it just shows that we have like this aversion to experiencing those parts of ourselves. And really the wholeness comes when we, and the fearlessness and the freedom comes when we're able to sit with the fear or the unhappiness and go, okay, well, could this be potentially as beautiful as my happiness is? Could my tears be as beautiful as my happiness? And there's so much wisdom and creative energy that's locked up inside of those feelings and those emotions and those experiences that we spend so much of our life avoiding or quickly trying to transform within ourselves. There's so much wisdom. I mean, some of the greatest artists of all time have produced some of their greatest work out of those states. And I think something I've realized is that even to be in the frequency of creating and creation itself, we don't need to be in a perpetual state of happiness. That's such a myth around creation.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because that's exactly the way I see it as well. You can, whatever level of consciousness you're at, or whatever mood you're in, or whatever state you're in, there's something beautiful that can be created from that place. Like as you said, like some of the best music, like even rock and roll music, comes from times that like really bad times economically and all that kind of stuff, and it pushes people to just express in just a different way, but it's still creation.
Yeah.
I think so the way I see it, finding happiness is a challenge, but the way that I've kind of looked at it just recently is like trying to find happiness is like, or trying to find joy, whatever you want to call it, is like a dog trying to remember that it's a dog. Like, the dog doesn't do that. It just bees a dog and runs around and plays and has fun. But it's like, from a bird's eye view, like, look, all these humans running around trying to remember how to find happiness. And it's like, you already are. Now go and create. That's the way I've started looking at it recently, anyway.
Oh yeah, it's so beautiful. That's the whole self-help movement, industry, all of that. Essentially we're trying to teach each other how to be and to not resist being what we are in the moment that we're experiencing it. I would say that as far as creation goes, the quickest way to shorten the timeline, if we're moving into the quantum reality, is to take off all the resistance from our experience. So you can, I can't even tell you the amount of time that I've received manifestations when I'm like just in a space of, okay, I'm going to turn everything off and I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to leave my work be for a while. I'm going to take this time to myself. I'm not going to focus on any of that. I'm just going to rest and relax and replenish and give to me. And voila, massive quantity comes in those spaces, because there's no resistance, there's no trying, there's no efforting. Yeah,
I agree. I've experienced that as well, because even in like work and business, when I started off like new project and stuff, I kind of got a bit crazy and started working 7 days a week and all this stuff without really thinking about it. And then I was like, oh, maybe I just won't work today. And then just literally took my focus and attention off everything. And then all this information came pouring in. I was like, oh, I should have done this sooner.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. When your focus when it's narrowed, you're narrowing your perception, aren't you? So technically you can't see as much. You're not open to receiving, really, I suppose.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. They just showed me an image of kind of like the flower of life. So letting go and emptying ourselves, coming to a space of silence or still point internally, and letting ourselves receive from the vision from that whole completed pattern. And then we take that vision and we focus it into the physical through the narrowing perception. But that's a process of going into the silent spaces to receive the vision. And then we can take our paintbrush and focus it, or our mind, and focus it into the actual physical experience. So creation, everything that we see in the physical is just energy that has been focused into being. So it starts out in this epically large and vast field of potential, the expanded octave, the expanded design, the flower of life and beyond, I'm sure. And we start to receive from that expansiveness when we quiet ourselves and we open up and we do go into that space of the void. And it's just that feeling of relief that takes off the resistance and allows information to pour through. And then once we have that information, we can start to play with it a little bit. Okay, well, what do I want to do with this information? How would I like to express it or share it or create from it? And do I want to use words, or do I want to do some abstract painting, or how do I want to share the information and the wisdom that I have received? And that's more of like the light side of creation, the masculine, outwardly expressive energy that takes the vision from the feminine and then brings it into fruition in the physical. And there's some great artists like Alex Gray that you'll see, they'll kind of step back from their work for a bit while they're creating the art. They'll step back, they'll close their eyes, they'll tune in, and then they'll come back and they'll paint a few strokes, and then they'll step back and they'll go into the space, and then they'll come back and they'll paint some strokes. And that's kind of the dance that I do with my creations, is I step back and then I go in, and I step back and I go in. It just all comes together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've been more of a to spend hours in one go, and then, but it's amazing how when you do step back at any point and come, even if it's like you come back to it the next day, like you listen back or you look back or read back whatever it was that you've made, and you're like you have that completely new perception, like, oh, this could be better, or I didn't notice that before, I can change that, and it just gradually grows over time, really. It's like with music, when I think like I've recorded a song perfectly, and then I'll leave some space and I'll come back and I realise, God, I thought that was perfect yesterday, and I could see how I could improve it drastically.
Yeah, this is really gorgeous, because what you're speaking to now is the refinement of our creations. And this is kind of the space that I've been in my own evolutionary experience recently, is that when I get downloads, I'm in a very electric state. So the energy comes through very clear. It's very objective. There's no emotion involved whatsoever. It's kind of like seeing the pattern and how it unfolds and how it operates and how it moves. And I translate it through, and then I'll just leave it there. And then I'll come back to the center, to a space of peace, and I'll ground in, and then I'll go back and I'll refine the writing, and I'll add heart and humor to it, to the best of my capacity. So it's this beautiful refinement process of, it's like we receive the impulse, but we don't necessarily need to act on it right away, or we can then start to mold and shape and refine the creation a bit once we're more grounded back in. So it's almost like taking that electric lightning rod of wisdom and epiphany, and then grounding it into soul.
Yeah, that's perfect translation.
Oh.
Nice.
So I would love to, if you're open to sharing, hear more about what your journey has been like recently, particularly over the past several months, because we are going through some pretty phenomenal collective shifts in consciousness right now. And I think we're all starting to experience deeper depths, greater understanding, newfound awareness. So I'd love to hear what your experience has been like.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster the last 12 weeks especially. So I mean, just to give like a bigger view just to begin with, I've kind of been building up for years to the point where I've to have the opportunity to start a business and like do my fulfill my light working destiny. And it's been a long time coming, and I've done a lot of jobs that I didn't really want to do, and I've just battled through. So this 2017 was the year that I took that leap and left my job and all that stuff, and I was committed to starting a business. And the last 12 weeks I invested a lot of money in a program to start an online coaching business, which was I mean, just I can remember the day that I signed up, and that it was a lot of money, and that huge rush of like, oh my god, I'm doing this. It was incredible, and completely what I did not expect at all was it was basically it became into like a spiritual experience rather than a business experience, and it completely, like, the amount of transformation that happened in the space of 8 weeks was like unreal. I've like never experienced anything like it. I completely, like, because it pushed, because I'd invested that much money and I wanted to make it succeed so much, and I was experiencing so much resistance and to, starting a business, it pushed me to become someone new. And like, I mean, I've meditated off on and off for years, but I never really had a good reason to do it. And then it was literally during that program that I discovered the quantum field, and I started meditating
Mm.
for an hour every morning. Just, it was so easy, just like that.
Mm.
And just had these loads of huge mental shifts about, finding fulfillment and happiness within without having to achieve anything. And it was just like it was a roller coaster, really. So I just feel like a
Yes.
different person now.
Ah, well, that's incredibly beautiful. Congratulations on your transformation. It's so funny because it's right. We want to build these businesses and these legacies, and little do we know that it's going to become the most phenomenal spiritual journey of our life.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, that's so beautiful, and I really love and appreciate that you have been honoring that space of meditation too. It's really imperative to go there if, well, one, if we're trying to birth anything, but there's so much that comes through in the space of meditation that, man, we could do a whole podcast on that topic alone. um, yeah, I mean, all the fundamental rewiring takes place. We start to access the quantum field and understand the intricacies and the dynamics of how it works. And we recognize ultimately, and this is kind of the funny thing, that how you observe people seeking that kind of happiness when they could simply melt into the beingness of it already. I think of that often with material pursuits because I really enjoy, I mean, I'm a Taurus. I love the earthy, sensual, earth, earthy experience. Um, but what I've recognized is that none of that matters if I'm not already experiencing the frequency of serenity and
Mm.
contentment within myself. That's ultimately what any of us are seeking through the materialization of any desire, whether it's a partner or more money or recognition or wealth, whatever the thing is. We're looking for a feeling, a frequency, our connection to source.
That's,
And,
yeah.
you know, you could
So
have
cool.
all that stuff. And if you're not tapped into the frequency, it doesn't matter anyways. You don't appreciate it. You don't enjoy it. It's just kind of there. It's like, okay, well, now what? I
Yes.
got all this stuff. Now what?
Yes. That's so cool.
Oh.
Yeah, so true. I mean, I think for me, I mean, there's a couple of things. Relationships been a big one for me because it's like there's that such huge drive to be in a relationship. Oh, I just want someone to love me so I can feel complete. And after, some quite disruptive relationships, I'd say, after I'd kind of healed and transformed from, I got to such, like, I'm not saying I'd never want to be in a relationship again, but I got into such a complete place of like such wholeness. I was like, I had to let go of that old paradigm of I need someone to make me happy. I was like, I don't need a relationship anymore. And it wasn't until I really started to dig into what the real power of relationships are, is, to grow into someone new and just connection and having someone to hold a mirror up. I was like, well, that sounds worth it to me. But in terms of having someone just, house in a white picket fence and to make you happy, that just completely melted away. And I knew that I could feel all that within me. I didn't need to go out and get a relationship for that. So that was huge for
Oh,
me personally.
yeah, that's beautiful. That's a profound recognition to have, and that it feels like that can translate over to all the other things, because in every part of this experience is relational, at least from my perspective. And I, because of my background and things that I've experienced, I really almost learned quantum creation and magic out of necessity, because some of the situations that I found myself in, all that I had to call upon were my inner resources. And so I got initiated fast. I learned very quickly how to work with energy and frequency in order to manifest in the physical, because I needed to do that. And along the way, I developed phenomenal relationships with nature, creation, life, physical, tangible objects. I started to realize that all of them kind of had their own essence, their own aliveness. And so I started to really relate with my surroundings. And I've definitely shared that experience with relationships where it gets really intense. And, I've tended to be on the side of things where I'll stay to my own detriment. And so over the past several years, I've just really committed to not allowing any type of toxicity into my life, because generally I have a capacity to just be with whatever somebody else is going through. But in the process of being so open in those ways, I have, I've bought into the whole martyr self-sacrifice paradigm. And so I've decided to give that up. Like, if it doesn't feed me with appreciation, then it doesn't have access to entry.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh. Yeah, definitely can relate to that one. Just being thinking you have to be a martyr and be there to save them when you're not getting anything back from it. There's no point. But it's hard, so hard to pull away from human. It's interesting you mentioned about, obviously, you like traveling as well, because, and talking about being in the frequency of what you want, because traveling is a big thing these days. I mean, people love it, but I mean, and there's a lot of people who get caught with that travel bug where they have to travel all the time, or as much as they can. They always have to get away, and I'm quite glad to have been able to not fall into that, because I went to South America for 6 months in 2015, and I was in a really negative place before I went. I was like, I just need to get away, and I was in that place. I need to get away, and it was a transformation experience, but not for the reasons that I expected. It's because I had those big breakthroughs with just taking responsibility for my life and not playing the victim and all that stuff. But one of the things that was funny when I came back, it was like I didn't feel really at any point that it was the paradise that I was looking for. I was, for months, because I booked it a year in advance, the whole trip, and I was like, as soon as I get there, I'm going to be so happy. And then I got there, and if it hadn't been for those shifts, I probably would have come back and felt like exactly the same. It was like there was no, because I didn't have that frequency of fullness. It was like that just didn't give it to me, and it was it was a great experience, like trekking to Machu Picchu and stuff, but that was never going to give me that feeling. And if I hadn't have realised that afterwards, I probably would have got stuck in that travel bug mode and gone travelling years and years trying to find that feeling, when I knew it was just right wherever I was on the planet.
Yeah. Oh, that's a huge realization to have. And I'm thankful that you're speaking to this, because I've been noticing this a lot. A lot of, spiritual beings, I mean, we're all spiritual beings. So it just, people who specifically work in the field of spiritual development, I do see two extremes: people who are so deeply inward that they stay in one space, and then people who are just globe-trotting and jet-setting. And so I tuned into the frequency, and I'm like, there's something to that, because in my experience, I am very much a lover of my space and my home, and having my personal sanctuary that I can go to plug in whenever I want. And I also really enjoy the beauty of new experiences because they help me to expand my perception. But I do see how some people use that as escapism to avoid having to be with themselves in the spaciousness. So it's interesting to watch that dynamic. So I totally hear what you're speaking to, that kind of evasive need to, like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to go and see more awesome places in the world. I'm like giving up on that, but it wouldn't be on gonna run away for 6 months because I can't face my life. It wouldn't be any. It would be just from a place of, I want to see this awesome place. That'd be it, really.
Uh-huh. Yeah, just for the joy of
Yeah,
experience.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. So, and we touched on it a little bit earlier about just rewiring the brain and um, meditation and stuff. I mean, what's your view on all of that stuff and manifestation tools, and what kind of techniques and tools you actually use to create a new reality for yourself, and the process of it for you?
Uh-huh. So there's a lot of tools that I employ at different times. Some that I only share with my inner circle because they're quite powerful. And there is a degree of responsibility that comes with using them once we have the awareness that they're accessible. But for me, it's now, if I want to create something, the process has become so exquisitely simple. And a main part of that is meditation. So in the meditation process, when we quiet our mind, because every time that our mind is running, we're forming neural pathways in our brain, for better or for worse. And it's really beneficial when we're forming positive pathways, but when we're not creating pathways that serve us, that we do need to undergo some depth of rewiring. And the beauty of the meditative space is that we still the mind, we allow it to rest, and then universal intelligence comes in and starts to do the rewiring for us. So it's quite an efficient way to allow a rewiring to take place versus forcing a rewiring to take place, which is what we'll see with most mindset work, where it's like, okay, you have a negative belief pattern. We've identified the negative belief. Now here's the new belief, the new story that you want to reinforce instead. So we're going to use force to start putting together that new neural pathway. And the thing is, until that old pathway is kind of cleared out, that just creates like what I call the boomerang effect, because it's so natural to go to the old pattern. That's what's most natural, and we'll always revert back to what is most natural to us. So going into the meditative space allows us to begin to delete those old programs. So right now they're showing me the example of a computer. When you're upgrading your computer, you turn it off while it goes through the update, and it comes back online with all these fresh new programs that you can use. So meditation works in a similar way. It kind of cleans out all the old programming and it starts to upload you with new programming, and there's no force involved. You just let the system rest. You turn it off and you allow the intelligence of the computer itself to do the work. So meditation is a huge part of that in my process. And then I use my fire, my willpower, my intention to command my reality, to activate and to invoke energies, frequencies, very specific things in great detail that I want to experience. And I rely upon my inner technology. So the way that I have been initiated and trained has led to the point of me being the tool. So releasing the need to have any tool that exists outside of myself, because I will always have me, and I will always be with me, and I will be wherever I go. And I might not always have a computer or a notebook or, herbs or whatever it is that we use to, make magic and invoke things. So working with the power of intent and will and heart. So when I'm doing an activation or I'm invoking something that I want, I come from a place of, and I don't even just want to say heart, I want to say soul, because it's my whole being is on board, my whole energetic being, my mind, my heart, my body, my energy, my intention, my will, all of it is very concentrated and from a space of soulful desire, not from a space of my human wants to experience this to fill some type of a void, but my soul wants to experience this because fill in the blank. So I'm very intimate with what I want, what I desire, and I know why I want it and desire it. And what that looks like to me now is really simply the promotion of mine and my community's well-being. That's really the crux of all of my desire.
Nice.
I don't feel like there's any physical thing that I really crave all that much. And to be honest, the simpler I keep it, the more powerful and grounded I feel. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
So it's asking through that power of will and intent, and then dropping into the meditative space where I'm silent so I can receive. So earlier we tapped on ask and receive. And so for me, it's the simplicity of that. It is, I know who I am. I know what I want. I'm going to define and refine and request and command my reality to begin rearranging and orchestrating itself on my behalf to create that tangible, physical, crystallized experience that I'm wanting to have. And then I just step back and I let myself receive it. So once I make that command, I don't do it again. I just let that be what it is, and I allow it to come in.
Yeah. Love it. Awesome. And is meditation, is that a pretty regular practice for you then?
Oh, yes. Hours every day.
Nice.
Every single day. Yeah, it's a huge, for me, it's, well, one, it's about receiving. So allowing myself to just be and receive energy, vision, inspiration, whatever it is that I've asked for. So it's kind of practicing non-resistance. So coming to that safe space where I know I can just open fully and let love in. So going to that space for that. And then also it's like an automatic rewiring of perception. So if I'm really wanting to shift something in my life that hasn't served me, which is always a pattern of perception because perception makes matter, I know I need to go into that space because my perceptions need to be rewired. And I know that space facilitates that. So.
Yeah. And that's the fastest way to do it, isn't it? When you want to,
Yep.
when you try and change something in your life by directly acting upon it, it's a long way to a long, slow journey, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Efficiency. I mean, I think my relationship with energy is efficiency. So how can I manifest efficiently? How can I rewire efficiently? How can I tune into love more efficiently? And that's kind of what these technologies have taught me and shown me are some of the most efficient ways for us to do that as a species. And it's really quite simple. It's beautiful, the simplicity of it. It's just a matter of will we allow it to be that simple?
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I just kind of tuned into like probably the last couple of weeks is coming into the present moment, and I suppose, the amount of time that you meditate as well help just kind of like calming the brain down, not needing so much stimulation to feel excited. I mean, because I kind of got into this place where I was like, oh, I want something to happen, I want something exciting to happen, and your brain would start. It's almost like an addiction kind of thing, and I kind of realized that it's like the more you get, it's like being attached to like drama, having to have a high drama life. And I suppose from a
Mm.
neuroscientific point of view, it's like the pleasure, the receptors in the brain, and everything gets jacked up. So you have to feel, you have to have more excitement to be able to feel something. But when you meditate a lot and or you do like mindful activities, it really calms the brain down, then it allows you to live a more simple life, like you said, where you don't need loads of things around you to be content, and then power comes from simplicity, I suppose. So yeah, just thought I'd share
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I love how similar the wavelengths are that we're on, because I was thinking that as well yesterday, how I really love the feeling of excitement, but it's so overrated,
Yeah.
in my opinion, because peace, peace is this like ultramagnetic force field of power, of true power. And when we allow ourselves to inhabit the vibration of peace, groundedness, calm, relaxed, centered, alert presence, quantity starts to drop into our experience. And I was kind of playing with these dynamics last year, because I was like, I mean, my whole life is just like the ultimate experiment for magic. And so I would get into these really electrical, um, alive spaces, of creation, where it's that excitement. It's just that, yes, excitement, motivation, inspiration, like, okay, what's next? Let's create, let's do.
Mm.
Um, and I was watching how things would manifest. And so from that space, I was getting tons of beautiful, I mean, synchronicity is happening all the time. It's just a matter of whether or not we're aware of it. But synchronicity, like tiny miracles, smaller amounts of money and income, like beautiful opportunities and connections. When I started to, so I was like, okay, there's that space. And now I'm going to go into my feminine, and I'm really going to go into that space of Omega and sink into the peace, the knowingness, that centered, grounded space. And I'm going to see what comes through here. Quantity and quality. So quantity is in, instead of receiving client sessions for $250 or $500, I was receiving $10,000 clients at a time. And they were people who were deeply resonant and aligned to this work, to wanting to know about this frequency and how to kind of come to balance and harmony in their own life. So people that were really aligned for the work. So I noticed that when I allowed myself to go to those places and spaces of substance, I was manifesting more substance, and it was profoundly more powerful and efficient than trying to always be in that electric, excited, because that's not sustainable. What so within the context of all of these experiments that I was doing in my own life, the energy started to speak to me about energetic efficiency and energy sustainability. So to go out to the broader scale, one of the things that I like to support is free energy and sustainable energy technologies for the planet. And for us to outwardly manifest those technologies, because they're there, we just haven't begun to use them yet. And there's a reason. And it's because we as a species, as humans who are facilitating the use of those technologies, have not achieved energetic efficiency and sustainability within ourselves yet. So the collective shift that we're undergoing now is a harmonization of those poles, of those, the electric and magnetic energy potentials that exist within our cellular membranes, are coming to a point of of balance and harmonization for sustainability. So the way that we create moving forward is going to look a lot different than it has ever looked, because we as a species are used to bouncing back and forth between extreme polarities. We're even taught in some cases to move to a polarity because polarity draws attention, or polarity is exciting, and polarity is what will make you stand out. But power exists at the center, and it is sustainable. So this is something that we can build upon from now into the future without ever feeling burnt out, without ever feeling like we go to these gorgeous highs and then we crash and burn. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we get to live from a point of peace and alertness and clarity, and trust and sustainability. And there's just so much more efficiency and power in that, especially as it pertains to manifestation and creation.
Wow, that's so awesome. I love that. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely something I'm going to have to experiment more with, just creating more space and more peace rather than excitement and drama. And one of the things I was going to say is, how do you financially support, a lifestyle like that? But as you said, you get even more money when you create that space, which is incredible.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so for me, it's really about balance. I think that would be like the takeaway message. So I create a balance between my feminine and my masculine, which for me, my masculine is just the expressive part of myself. So I'm receiving and then I'm sharing. I'm receiving and I'm sharing. And I've somehow, and I'm so thankful for this, managed to enter into a space energetically in my own life where I'm working primarily with my inner technology to create the outward. So my reality does not function like most people's. I state what I want and it comes, and I am aware of my power and capacity to do that. So if I want to align with a client for, let's say, a year, that would be a $30,000 experience, and it would be that would be the value of the energetic exchange that we share. So I can teach them how to create from that space of efficiency, which with much greater power than the constant need to be in the hustle, in the grind, in the the old ways of doing things that we're taught. And so I will go internal, and I will feel that, and I will feel the fullness of having that experience and sharing that journey with somebody else, and what that's going to look like. And I ask for that creation to come to me, and then it comes to me because I don't have any resistance to being a powerful creator. And that's the space that I like to lead people into. That's, what the main part of my work is to lead people into those spaces so that they can live a balanced, harmonious life and manifest with ease, because creation it's supposed to be natural. It's supposed to be effortless. Like you were saying earlier with the example of the dog, by virtue of our beingness, we should be able to say, this is an experience I want to have, and then have that experience. It shouldn't be any more complicated than that. But it's a lot of rewiring our program that tells us it needs to be more complicated than that, or tells us that there's all these steps between A and Z that we have to complete before we can create. It's like, no, okay. So for most people who hold a more, I don't even know, religious maybe conceptualization of what source or God is to them, I would ask this question: if the creator came to you, would you tell the creator that they needed to do or be all of these things before they could have what they wanted? And most likely the answer would be, well, no, it's the creator. They can, he, she, it can have and do and create as it wants at will. And because we are that holds true for all of us. So it's really allowing ourselves to enter into the space of beingness and knowingness that we are that, and allowing our creation to support us with the least amount of effort, like energetically efficient, right? So it's like we're only creating when we're inspired. We're only creating when it feels like art, when it feels good to share, when it feels good to express. And then if we're not in that space, then that's okay too. And we know that regardless of the space that we occupy, our creation is still being manifest. Yeah. So.
Amazing. Beautiful.
So yeah, so your original question was coming into that space and manifesting quantity. This is about knowingness. So in deep trust, deep trust, allowing your human to let go of the reins, you coming internal and you going, I am that I am that I am. And really occupying that space, and knowing that by virtue of that, you start to open yourself up to receive more. So this is about grounding into your worth, grounding into your value, and trusting that when that thing manifests, you have the power and the potency to create that exchange of value from your beingness. Your beingness is enough to be in service to whomever comes to you for that exchange.
Love it. Awesome. And I mean, how unplugged do you kind of stay from the hecticness of the world?
Yeah, so this is very beautiful, because I have amazing communities that I have built around me locally. I'm based out of Austin, Texas right now, and also in the online world. And I managed to stay relatively unplugged. So usually once every day or two, I'll share something online, and I'll branch that out to as many of my communities as possible, the gift of the internet and technology. So to my email list, to my online groups, to other tribes that I'm a part of. And then I connect in with my actual physical local community here at least 2 or 3 times every week. And other than that, I'm pretty unplugged. And when I do choose to plug in, it's to healthy experiences that I know will add to me, will add value and nurturance to me. I spend a lot of time listening to classical music and kind of keeping my life pure to the best of my capacity. So quality feels really important to me, the quality of data that I'm programming myself with via relationships, via what I'm looking at and reading online, via what I'm listening to and consuming in my body, all of that. And I think that that's such a unique and individual thing too. So I think it's valuable for each of us to tune into, well, what is my threshold with that? Like, what nurtures me and what doesn't nurture me? And then loving ourselves enough to give that to ourselves, and to not allow things that aren't in alignment with that.
Yeah, I think that's important, because I suppose you could try and push yourself too much to unplug, because that works well for other people. It doesn't necessarily work for everyone. Obviously there's different degrees to which, I mean, it's just doing what I suppose you're comfortable with. Yeah, and as you said, just being mindful of the things that probably aren't really serving you, that you are doing at the moment, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we've flown by. It's over an hour now. Very quick. I think it'd be awesome to have another conversation at some future point, because there's so much more that we can that we can go into. I think this is just the beginning, really. So
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we tapped the tippy top of the iceberg.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Would you just like to share with the listeners then where they can find out more about your work?
Yeah, of course. Well, first, thank you everybody who has tuned in and stayed with us for the duration of the podcast. I'm thankful for the opportunity to connect with Chris and with all of you. You can find me at SOLARA Sophia Rose on Facebook and Instagram, and you can visit my website, solararose.com, to learn about energy activations and private mentorship programs that I offer. Those are the main ways to reach me and reach out to me. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today. It's been a great conversation, and thank you for coming and sharing all your knowledge and wisdom with the listeners. And I look forward to connecting with you again in the future.
Same, Chris. Thank you so much.
So that's all for today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. It's been a great conversation, and I'll put the links to SOLARA's website in the show notes so you can check that out as well. So thank you all so much for listening, and I'll catch you all next time. Take care. Bye bye.